is matching up, is harmonizing with the greater fields. Where it finds itself is what it feels like to me. And
I agree with you. And the boundary layers are much more sensitive and a little bit more active, if you will, simply because of the change in the perception, I think.
And they're an undulating ridge walking is what it feels like to me. Rather than a surfboard, I'm crawling.
No, I agree with you. There's at that level, and that's a very good way of describing it. It's sinusoidal almost in terms of the up and down. It's not you're not riding anymore. You're
amplitude
being taken for a ride. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. I could sit and talk with hours with you on this.
Well, give me a call someday, and we'll sit around and bullshit. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Just one more last question before we talk about boats. Paul.
Oh yes. Hi, Clif. I've just turned my mic on. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Sure. Yeah. No worries.
Oh, all right. Yeah. There is new science which suggests that the Big Bang and black hole theories are incorrect. Is there any language to suggest that the model for creation will collapse? The second part to it is, if there is, will the ancient Sumerian understanding of creation return to its rightful place? And that's not the Zecharia Sitchin version.
No, I understand that. I've done a lot of the L. What else? So, no, I know that. And, know, it's curious. They have the almost Vedic or Sanskrit notion that I do of the continuous creation destruction, which is expressed as, the Kali and the Vishnu alteration or oscillation. So, yeah, we actually do show that. A lot of it stems from the riots in Rome. That's a temporal marker that when that occurs, there's just everything happens in a huge rush shortly thereafter. The breakdown of the creation understanding probably is beginning to fail globally at an academic level because of something that occurred in November of last year that has yet to reach visibility, but is related to our understanding, in which we've always said will propel the new electrics. So I suspect that there's all kinds of activity at a level that we can't, as regular humans walking around, really sense. And it's at some business level or military level or maybe even in the black ops world, I don't know. And that it will be coming out over time. But the very basic expression of the physics involved will do away with almost everybody's understanding and all the creation myths that we have now, except for those that rely on the idea of the oscillation of all energies.
Yeah.
That, by the way, we expect some big visibility. I expect some big visibility in the end of November this year.
Yeah. Have you seen Hawking's paradox? Have you seen that?
No, I'm sorry. I have very little time to watch media, so no, I haven't seen that.
Well, he's talking about black holes not existing, or cancelling each other out, so it'll tear it down, I think.
I think so as well. Why be all that complicated? It's pretty simple,
Yeah, greater and greater complexity, isn't it? It's like a child called lion.
And it's also, but it all sort of makes sense that they're struggling trying to understand this, and complexity is increasing underneath the academic eye as they're looking at it. And yet, how can that be? And it's like, well,
that's right.
States crashing into each other. What do you expect?
But then they own the agenda, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, so they can.
And that'll come back on too. I like being a sovereign individual and not being owned by anything. You ought to look at some of the root words there talking about Sumerian and go all the way back to the root word of ownership, because it means to be possessed by.
Yeah.
Not actually, so you are possessed by the theories that you're going to be out there promulgating, or the possessions that you're attached to. And it's better off not to have any of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a time for detachment, for the oneness, for the stillness, or whatever you want to call it,
Well, I like to think of it as time to go, sailing and eat pie, but yeah.
or fishing.
There you go. I used to be a fisherman. And like I used to say that, the day that we were so well known. My dad was such a good fisherman, and I was such a good fisherman. I was raised in the wilds of Alaska, and, I could catch the salmon with my bare hands when I was 5 years old.
Oh, great.
But I say the day I gave it up, fish all over the planet had a party.
Yeah, well, I haven't done much with my son this year, so there you go. Thank you very much, Cliff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. In prefacing this section, many had noticed for a while Clif using the word boats in many of his reports, articles, and interviews, either directly or in an offhanded or indirect way. Then in the most recent interview with Suzanne Toro and from Shape 4, Clif described a linguistic entity called Future Pop that contained two distinctly separate groups, which had split from the current populace due to cataclysmic circumstances. One group was associated with new electrics, renaissance of science, and high technology, while the other group was associated with scavenging and coastal water-based tribes. Please tell us, Clif, about your fascinations with boats and the importance of boats from your point of view in our future.
Yeah, and this is an interesting sort of a story, or an interesting sort of a subject, a context, because I have personal associations, and my dad was a boat builder. My lineage goes all the way back to the Normans, who come by way of the Viking boats and also into the Azores. So I've got both sides of my family are all boat people, really. You know, I come by it legitimately, so to speak. However, there's also, in spite of my fascination and enjoyment of boats and so forth, there's also a curious level of a hole in the universe of our thinking relative to boats as a species that encompasses all kinds of things, and boats are currently at the center of a huge archetypical shift that's taking place at the moment, and they are also at the center of our lost understanding of who we are. And we probably should just sort of start off and say that, and take it in reverse and say that, well, our understanding of who we are as a species is skewed because none of the academics on the planet seemingly are small boat people, because everybody that is an archaeologist or someone who investigates the past of human history is all about the way the great masses of humans are all going truckabout over the land all the time, and they even go to such great extent to hypothesize land bridges in order to see that groups of people that are sharing similar cultures have a way of communicating with each other, and they do so at great extent of fabrication of theories and postulates and so on, all to avoid the idea that for some reason, I don't know why they're avoiding it, that people used boats to get around. Now, it is true that if you were a space alien and you landed on our planet and you just saw our species, you wouldn't really think much of us as a seafaring species at the moment. You would note that we would have a huge amount of activity on the ocean. In fact, the largest single warehouse on the planet is all of the boats that are in truckabout with all the goods stored on them. And it's also the largest single component of our economic base that is never taken into account. We don't take into account, for instance, all of the millions of gallons of diesel oil currently in the holds of all of the boats on the planet, nor their goods, nor their impact on the pollution, nor their impact on the hiring of the planet at a species level, and so on. And yet they are a very significant level of our social order and mostly ignored. And if you were a space alien and you're looking into our past history and you followed our academic leanings, you would think that we were basically scared of the water. And nothing could be further from the truth. All parts of the human body express ourselves as coastal dwellers, which is why we still live in the main all around the coasts. If you look, for instance, you see that human beings are used to looking for predators at eye level and below, and that we're used to escaping predators in two different ways, climbing and swimming. We know this because of our instant ability as infants to be able to grasp and climb from our monkey ancestors, and we also know that we're swimmers by the pattern of the secondary sexual characteristics in the human body, including hair growth. And also, by the way, curiously, the way our teeth and our nails form. That's a long discussion there. But in any event, so we're designed to interact and run away from lions and stuff and escape in the surf. And then when the lions go away, we come out. And so naturally, one would think, oh, this is cool stuff. I like this water. What else can we do with it? And you see a stick floating on it, and you think, well, as long as I'm out here hanging around trying to wait out that hungry lion over there, I'll get on this little stick floating around and paddle away and see if I can't get away from the lion a little bit earlier than simply waiting around for his whim to go away. And so one thing leads to another, and you've got your stick, and pretty soon you think, well, I'll be the master of 2 sticks that are floating, and I'll be that much better, and I'll be drier, and next thing you know, we've got mega yachts. But along the way, we lose this idea that the real core of who we are as humans has to do with how we were and how we still can be and still are as boat creatures, as creatures that are not strictly land dwellers. And the vast majority of us are. There's no impetus within our society other than a few tax laws that are just sops to lobbyists. There's no impetus in our society to put us back into the boating world. And if we look at the way the distribution of small boat activity is around the planet, we find that in spite of the subtle and not so subtle pressures of the powers that be against the small boating activity in the Anglo-American Empire, we still continue to do small boating activity. Now, a lot of this can be traced back to, in the Anglo-American Empire anyway, back to the hassles that the current bloodline aristocrats had with the great sea peoples that existed and were their contemporaries before the cataclysm. And a lot of the information can be taken as conjecture, but if you go to the trouble of reading some Sanskrit works, you find that a lot of the Vedic texts refer to the great sea peoples, and we have huge amounts of evidence that these sea peoples exist, including all of the historic evidence that goes all the way back into Egypt. And the Proto-Atlantean and the subsequent movement of the people around the planet. And so, for instance, we have a curious memory about how we are with boats and stuff. And also, we know that there is a deliberate attempt to hide from us who we were in the past as seafaring people. Most people are not aware that when the United States, when the continental North America was being explored, that a great number of stellae in the plural, these big, tall obelisk critters, carved stone things, were found at the mouth of the Mississippi River. And these stele had multiple languages on them, including Egyptian hieroglyphs, Sumerian cuneiform, presumed Sumerian, and something resembling Sanskrit, and they told who knows what. We don't know, because they were probably all residing wherever it is we keep all of our super secret stuff, below the Smithsonian or wherever, but they were all gathered up and removed by the powers that be and stored away because they didn't want people to know that this continent had been routinely visited by the peoples from whom the pharaohic Egyptians descended. Nor did they want them to know that there exist caves now in Australia that we have yet to discover that are still filled with relics of these pre-pharaohic Egyptians, seafaring people that used hieroglyphics that the Egyptians used, and so on. We have a lot of evidence to this. Now, a lot of that evidence has disappeared or has been hidden away, and we're also seeing from a linguistic viewpoint that the powers that be are filtering out the historical, they're putting pressure on academia to not support people that are investigating our historical use of boats as a species and the really cool things we used to do with them and all of this, the traffic we used to have around the whole planet. There are many authors that have noted things like the mummies having cocaine and tobacco in them that could have only come from South America when theoretically the Egyptians never went to South America. And that theoretic is a big, huge word because we've got evidence